Hello, everybody. My students have requested me to share my process of when I get clients and how I take them through project scoping, through creating proposals, and then budgeting, and then project management, and then scheduling. Like, how do I take those clients through this journey in the most professional and organized way? And, how and what it is before the production even begins for any project, what happens, and how I manage that as an independent contractor. You are also going to be taking over as freelancers, independent contractors. And a lot of my freelance students have asked me if there is an organized way of doing project management from start to finish. In my course, I've already, discussed the creative process of creating the production, of creating style frames and pitches, and then taking things into production. But today I'm going to discuss how to create organized, proposals, how to have these meetings, initial discovery meetings with your clients, and how to kind of like leverage your creativity as a creative director, as a freelancer, independent contractor, to kind of to use those skill sets that you have that you can, help the client understand visually what your scope is and have clarity in communication. Now we can go the route of picking up the phone and talking to the client, but as an independent contractor, the most important thing for the client is to have that experience with you, which is best communication, best proposals, best budget, high quality content being created. Now, the reason why we focus on so much of organization and efficiency in the beginning of the project, because it kind of lays the foundation of moving forward where, you are, more prone to create high quality content because of the right communication. So let's kind of like dive into it and I can show you. So this is one of the clients that I worked with. They came to me because they wanted explainer videos and they were creating 5 different explainer videos. They did have scripts, but they did not know how to move forward creatively, how the production process looks like, how much time it takes to create them. And they were completely lost in terms of how the creative process is. That's when I came in and I made sure that I kind of take them step by step and give them an organized way of approaching the project. So this was my initial email where I kind of gave them an initial project scoping. Clients often provide references, including screenshot, links, videos, images, and designs to convey their expectations and vision. It's a good practice to kind of go to your client and be like, hey, do you have any screenshots or any references of what you've seen or what you have in mind that you would like to create? Even if they have it or not, that's not a problem, but just asking them will help you kind of visualize and create a focused design for your client. I typically offer 4 distinct creative directions in PDF format akin to visual storyboard pre-production. So what I initially do is, because right now we're trying to budgeting, we're kind of like creating, the overall scope of the project. So I would go on Google, grab images that I can, which aligns a little bit close to what the client is looking for, and create like a pitch. Making sure that the client understands that these images are just references. They're not how exactly things are going to look like, but kind of like a direction of how things are going to look like, kind of giving them like, if it's going to be illustrations, how the illustrations are going to be, what kind of textures they're going to be, what kind of colors they're going to be. Again, we're not going to go too much in detail, but I kind of like put together some pitch for them with the designs that I've not created, but something that matches what they've been wanting or what I've done before. Some of the past work that I've done, I will give it to them as well. But any kind of a visual that the client can see will define to you whether or not this is the direction they want to go or this is not the direction that they want to go. So the more visuals, the more better it is. These options encompass various styles such as illustration, typography, vector based, ensuring we cater to the budget and the design preferences. And also sometimes I kind of show different variations to clients where it's like, this is 3D, this is 2D, this is flat, this is 2.5D. Give them options so that you also have, variations of budgets that you can give them too. So once we lock in the style direction, budget, and script, we transition into the production phase. Then the design, production, development process, kind of explaining them the process of like this phase includes creating comprehensive style frames for each script section, incorporating design assets, color schemes, layouts, compositions, and typographic elements. These style frames define the final look and feel of the project. Now, this is where you're going to really create style frames, which are according to the brand guidelines, and, creating assets from scratch so that you're not using somebody else's work, and using elements which are, licensed properly, giving them a rundown of them, and then animatics and final delivery. Then once all those style frames are created, then you come in and then you kind of create the animatics, where you just have your style frames and maybe some voiceover or music choices that you can show them as animatics. You don't have to animate anything at this point, so that they can understand if the voiceover is working really well, the voiceover is working good, the music is working good, and they can approve all of that. Because if you create all your animations, and then after creating the whole animations, the client comes back and says, we don't like the music, everything has been synced to the music from the beginning. That's just going to create a lot of more time to go in and do things. So there's a reason why I do all of these hierarchies, so that once one thing is locked, we can go into the other one. If you start animating before the design process, maybe they want to change some designs along the way, and then you have to change your animation, and that causes a lot of extra time that you have to put in. But if you go through a process, then you're making sure that the right amount of time is allocated, the right amount of money is allocated, and then you're just going through the processes. Now, when we're scoping out the project, key questions that you can ask is, what's your expected timeline for the final delivery? Have you established a budget for the project? Do you have specific platforms in mind for uploading the animation, such as YouTube, social media, or client's website? Because then, the sizings are going to be different for everything. So once you have all of this, when you send this to the client kind of starts to have a picture of what's going on and what's not going on. So that's an email I send them initially. And then the second thing, what I do is, when I'm on a call, the next thing is like discovery call. So when I'm on a call, I kind of have this sharing my screen with them, and I go through all of these things with them. So first, making sure that the purpose of these videos that you're creating, the purpose of the design, the purpose of, whatever client that you're working with, it's clearly laid down. So that you have all the objectives laid out, like the gain insights into the various organizational roles and their contributions to compliance, understand the crucial function of the legal team and the collaborative role of supporting teams in ensuring compliance, navigate through key legal considerations and industry specific regulations impacting the organization. So these are all, I was working with a company who, it's a legal team. So I was making sure that all of these things were in there. And for me, the purpose of the video is very important to understand fully. So when they look at it and I look at it, that means we are on the same page with that. Then brand assets, you're going to make sure that you're going to ask them if they have any brand assets. If they have any brand assets like logos or style guides or anything that they already have, you're going to request for that. Any past stuff that they've done, anything that they can give you, so that you know what you have to create, what you don't have to create before you even start doing the budgeting. Now, the target audience, you need to know who the target audience is. Is there any background research on them? Individuals, employees within company, lawyers, back-to-back, marketeers, you have to ask them who the target audience is going to be, if they've ever done a market research, or if they've ever done any of those things. Kind of getting the scope of all of this creative direction. What's the key message for the project? Streamline information, transform into easily memorable, understandable key concepts. And that's what we're trying to do. The purpose of these videos were educational. So when new employees were onboarded, we give them the same information. So, they don't have to have the same meetings. They don't have to repeat the same information. They just go and watch these engaging videos, which has proper information. They're engaging. And all of it was a lot of complex information because it's in the legal realm. So my duty was to kind of take all that complex information, translate it into simple, language, and then also use simple visuals to define those concepts that we were going to train people for onboarding. Then technical deliverables, website training videos, shareable MP4 videos, timeline, what are the key deliverable dates? Like, you have to kind of I was told that they wanted something within the next couple of months, which means we have 2 to 3 months to work on these 5 videos, which are 5 minutes long. Then you kind of let them know what the next steps are going to be, the initial payment, the project timelines, and then design production. Yeah, so at this point you can create your own terms about how you want to be paid, or you can work out, how the employer pays you. Different projects have different, payment terms. Some projects that I've done in the past would be like 30 days, 15 days, bi-weekly. But this specific project was something that they had asked me how I wanted to be paid. So I said 50%, before the production begins, and then 50% after the project has been delivered to them. So, you kind of scope out all of these really important things before you even start production, so that all of these knit and grits are already being cleared off. So you kind of start doing those scopes, and then once you have all of this information, and then I obviously took these screenshots from the internet to kind of guide them into where I wanted to take this project creatively. More icon oriented, more typography oriented, more like flat 2D characteristics of characters oriented. So kind of like when I have a discovery call with them, after the first discovery call, this is how I start scoping things out, start painting things out. Now, after this is done, and when I have all of this information from them, and then I have, the first couple of emails, the first couple of calls, and then after having this discovery call, what I do next is I went into Canva and I created like a content creation estimate. And that's the proposal, the final proposal for the budget that you send your client. And, I just have a very creative way of doing things, because I'm a visual person who can explain things in depth visually. So then I what I do is, say a little bit of my company, or whatever your company does, or just kind of, if you're a freelancer, explain your maybe working history, or the contracts that you've done, or the milestone projects that you've done. And I know you guys are still students, and even if you've done any personal projects or anything, just write a little bit of information about you. Or if you're not established independent contractor yet, talk about your skill set, talk about like collaborations that you've done, talk about, your website or something like that. Over here, I have given them a recap of everything that we talked about. Again, I emphasize my students a lot to document everything that they have discussed with their clients, because it helps everybody to be in the same page. The reason why I created this beautiful, visually compelling proposal was, now that all the information is in there, so when they have to take this information and get any budgets approved from other departments, they can just forward this, and other departments can know exactly what they were talked about, what is needed for the scope of the project, and they can approve budgets. And budgets can be approved really well this way, rather than a department being approached and said, we need a budget for XYZ, as compared to sending them this scope and proposal. So, so everything that I discussed in that discovery call, the specifics of icon creation, visual assets, diagrams, bullet points, recycle a lot of the material so that we can stay within the budget. Then we talk about design, what kind of design we're going to have, the dynamic presentation style, vector-based, LinkedIn Learning course style, iconography, illustrative style, and what the process is going to be like. Lock the scripts first, and then set the budget, then project schedule, then design development, then feedback, animatics, animation production, feedback, and then delivery. Kind of having all of those things there, so that along the line, people are not, your clients are not confused about where in the process they are. What services are you going to provide them? You're going to provide them with, in my case, like creative direction, consultancy, budgeting, Adobe Creative Suite expertise, style frames, motion graphics, video editing, sound editing, in-depth knowledge of file formats, conversions, codecs for optimal viewer experience, latest explainer video industry trends, and memory retention. Having all of those things strategically placed in there, so that an infographics is not only giving you information, but it's also giving you things that can stay in your memory, using visual strategic placements and movements that you can recall through memory, whatever you have learned. And then deliverables, of course, 5-minute explainer videos broken down into 2 segments, however you will do that. And then you give them a price list. Now, these are all just mock-ups and demos to show my students, but the price list is going to look completely different. Doesn't mean that this is the price list for an infographics that you're going to be doing. This is just a mock-up that I put together for you guys to kind of know how I do the budgeting. So, every client is different. Sometimes the clients need comparison. Sometimes the client just has a budget. But in this case, when the client, wanted a budget to be created, this is how I created all of them. So first I defined how many days I needed for everything. 4 days for style frame, 2 days for feedbacks, 2 days for animatics, 5 days for animation, and then 2 days for feedback. So total days is going to be 15 days. And then, the basic is going to have the dynamic presentation, the kinetic type basic 2D vector illustrations. I just gave them a basic, a basic and then an advanced and then total advanced. You can also kind of break it down in those three and then give them like kind of like a breakdown of how that pricing is affecting them. And then, also making sure that you're limiting things, like, limiting things to 2 feedbacks, limiting to 5-minute videos. If anything goes beyond 5 minutes, then that means you are going to be charging them extra for that. This is all to keep everything in the scope, so give them a breakdown of everything so that they can understand what's going on. Some resources that I send them so that they can go through some of the infographics that I've done previously, so that I can go through them and be like, this is the kind of style we like, or this is the kind of style we don't like, and then defining the next steps, locking the scripts down, helping them, making sure that if there's any repetition in the scripts, taking that out. If something can be condensed down to simpler language, then helping them do that. If some of the paragraphs can be reduced to smaller, simpler language, and also doing that, and then asking them to gather a few references, screenshots or links or anything, and then putting a link in there to Calendly or anything else to schedule your next meeting to make the processes more efficient and organized along the way. So all of this information, so when you send it over the proposal, then you are sending over a proposal which is organized and which is extremely professional. And people love working with professional people, obviously, because they want their money's worth. And this is showing that you're motivated, you are organized, and you are an extremely professional person who works in a very organized way. So I hope this kind of helped my students to kind of understand how to move around things. Other things that I tell my students are also, once you have your discovery call, your pitches, and your proposal and your budget approved, next step is invoicing. Try to create your invoices in the same branding as your own, freelancing independent contractor branding that like I have used. Try to keep everything consistent. Try to be very professional about your communications with them. But after this is done, after the invoice is done, then you also create a contract. Contract will state all of these things. And if it goes beyond 2 feedbacks, then this is going to be an extra price. If I have to go outside of the scope, then this is how extra this is going to be. If, any delays from the client happens, and this is extra how it's going to be. If the payments are delayed, this is extra how it's going to be. So you kind of like try to scope out everything so that the client does not kind of go outside of the scope of the project. Because if you don't lay it, the whole purpose of laying these things out like this in an organized way so that the client can really truly understand what it is that they need to do, what are the limitations, what are the unlimitations, what can they do, what cannot do, and you kind of scope everything out. This really helps as students, when you get a first project, you just want to jump on it and start doing them and start making money, start making that connection. But if you take these few steps before you start doing, work with any client, it's going to protect you. It's going to build a really good relationship with the client, because then you both are going to be in the same page in terms of what to expect from this project. Now, the next thing would also be your contracts, your invoices, and then you would go into Asana or any project management tool that you're using, and then you would lay out your project in there, where you will, put in the same kind of like 2 days for creating style frames, whatever days, and I'm just using like mock-ups, 3 days for style frames, 2 days for feedbacks, and then you will put them all in dates, and then you will invite everyone to be part of that project scope. And then you can send them a screenshot saying this is how the project is looking, because sometimes when you tell the client that something's going to take 3 months, they don't really understand why something is going to take 3 months, because they don't understand the depth of it. But when you use a project management tool like Asana and you send them a screenshot of ahead of time and be like, this is the scope, this is how it's looking, then for them it's easy to digest and easy to understand that why it's going to take 3 months or 2 months or 2 weeks or a week, whatever it is. If you lay those things out, also send them screenshots for that. So that's how I kind of do my process before I even jump into production, just kind of doing all of these things. I also tell my students that you can collaborate with producers as well, where the producer does all this for you, where you're creating all the scope and everything, but the communication and negotiation can be done by another person, and you're just somebody who does the production. But I was somebody who did all of these things. I had fun doing that because I'm really good at doing these things. I didn't need another person to come in and create, but you can always, collaborate and build your own team as independent contractors. All right. Any comments are welcome. Any feedback is welcome. And I hope you guys had fun.